Phase 2. Here we go, guys. We're diving right into it this week. Last week, Santino and I discussed Phase 1 of the MCU. For the most part, I think we pretty much enjoyed everything in Phase 1, right?
Yep, I we enjoyed everything in phase one.
So here we go. Here's where we dive into, I think, some of the earlier, more controversial part of the MCU before we get to Phase 3, where that seems like where it really starts splitting the fan base. But we'll get there next week. But today, we're talking Phase 2, and we're jumping right in with Iron Man 3. So, Santino, what's your overall thoughts of Iron Man 3? Because I know this is one that this almost seems like it's one where you either love it or you hate it. So where do you fall?
I'm on the fence about it because there are definitely good concepts of Iron Man 3 which I like, and there are also really bad ones that I don't like at all. I
Mm-hmm.
really am. I'm split. I'm a split decision on it because there. I think Iron Man 3 is a testament to good concepts, shit execution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
Iron Man 3 is like anytime I watch it, which isn't that often, because overall I really don't like it that much. Um, but yeah, there are some things in it that are amazing. You're completely right about that one. I mean, no joke. I say this to anyone. Go back and rewatch the trailers for this one. Those are some of my honestly, this is so weird. The trailers for Iron Man 3 are some of my favorite MCU trailers because they were setting up something that could have been so cool with the Mandarin. And I know obviously fan scripts, fan theories, none of that is real. None of that's canon. But I did read a few fan scripts after the movie came out where I was like, oh, and they based those fan scripts around what we saw in the trailer. So I was like, okay, these people, they actually got some real cool creativity on it. And a lot of those fan scripts were a lot better than what we got. So let's dive into, let's go with the positives first, then we'll dive into some of the negatives. What is some of the stuff you really like about Iron Man 3?
Okay. What I like about Iron Man 3 is, for me at least, the the realism of it. And what I mean by that is the fact that after the events of the Avengers, where Tony, threw the nuke and he destroyed the army of Thanos. I like the fact that he is traumatized by that event because he's clearly a guy. He's a guy who just made a metal suit and decided to fight evil. So, seeing that there's more out there than he can handle, it makes him afraid and gives him like a sense of fear of the unknown. So I like that concept of bringing down Tony to like a sense of fear. Except I just don't like the fact that
They
in my
didn't
opinion,
handle it properly, I don't think. The
yeah,
fact that they took his PTSD, and I genuinely think the biggest mistake came before the movie was even made, was not having Jon Favreau finish it, because I frankly don't like Shane Black very much as a director. I don't really like a lot of his movies. I don't like his style of humor, and I didn't like the direction he really went in this. I genuinely think Favreau would have done a far better job. I don't really remember why Favreau stepped down. It could be the same reason that Derrickson left Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, just creative differences. But I mean, Favreau was still in the movie as Happy, so he couldn't have had that bad of blood with Marvel where he left overall. So I don't really know why he left, but it was Shane Black. Just I don't like the style of humor he inserts into his movies. I really don't. And treating the PTSD almost like a joke at some scenes, like some scenes like the restaurant scene when it really hit him. That time I was like, okay, they got it then, but then later it just became a joke. Like, I mean, he basically was cured of his PTSD later in the film. And it's like, it doesn't exactly work like that. I mean, I've never been in a situation where I've gotten PTSD, but I have actually spoken to people who have it or have had it. And they're like, they were like, no, they did kind of treat it like a joke. So again, me never having had it or experienced it, I'm going to go off the opinion of those who've had it and how they've experienced it and what their views were on it.
Yeah, so I've never had PTSD because I've never experienced anything like that. But yeah, I feel like yeah, I can agree with you there where in some scenes they made like a joke, which I don't really agree with because it's like you can't really joke about that. But my main complaint really would be the Mandarin himself. Like Ben Kingsley
Hmm.
was wasted, and
Oh, probably one of the dumbest decisions ever made in the MCU. And um, I know a lot of people use the excuse of all hail the king made it so the Mandarin still exists. It doesn't matter. That was not originally what they were going for in the movie. And the fact that he's going to be in Shang-Chi, again, that still doesn't take away the fact that they did the Mandarin wrong in Iron Man 3.
yeah,
Like, I hear that excuse all the time when people bring up they did the Mandarin wrong and they're like, all hail the king fixed it. It doesn't matter that he's gonna be in Shang-Chi. It still doesn't matter. It doesn't change what we got in Iron Man 3. So it's like you can retroactively change it all you want afterwards, but that's still not what they were going for with Iron Man 3. So it's almost I wish looking at it, I almost wish they hadn't even bothered with the whole Mandarin thing because they didn't do anything with it. Why didn't they
yeah,
just go with the extremis virus?
yeah. That's the thing. They could have just had Guy Pearce be the main bad guy, and really the story wouldn't change. I mean, like my main gripe is that the trailers were so good in hyping up the Mandarin, and by that time, by 2013, I'll just give a little bit of personal background. I read some Iron Man comics, so I knew who this Mandarin guy was. So here I am in the theater, hoping that this is gonna be awesome, and it really wasn't.
No, it
But
wasn't. I when they revealed who the Mandarin was, I almost thought it was a joke. Like I'm not kidding. I almost left because I was like, this is a joke. They're not actually doing this, are they?
yeah, because that's the thing, where that's the main point of contention I have that the Mandarin is really like just a Trojan horse, and he can't do like one of the main villains of Iron Man dirty like that. I kind of a
Yeah,
bad thing.
it'd be like if they did a Batman movie where like the Joker was this big threat, and then out of the blue they revealed that it was like the Mad Hatter posing as Joker the whole time. It'd be like, why didn't you just make the Mad Hatter the villain the whole time then? What was the
Yeah,
point of using a big name like that and then flipping it? And this is the other thing that if you think about all three Iron Man movies, he essentially had the same villain in all three movies, a rich industrial billionaire who hates him.
yeah,
It's the same thing. Obadiah Stane, rich businessman who hated him. Justin Hammer, rich businessman who hated him.
yeah. Well, that's the thing, because like I'm glad Iron Man 3 was the last in a way because you can't really do anything more with Stark after Iron Man 3 because he's more, his story's done, and I'm glad that ever since Iron Man 3 finished, he kind of
Uh,
had his own
I
thing.
see. We'll get to that. We'll get to what you just said next week more because I disagree. I genuinely feel like Civil War was more of an Iron Man movie than a Captain America film.
Oh, okay. So yeah, we'll
But
get
we'll cover that.
no,
We'll
but
get to that one later.
Chad, I feel like we're trashing this movie kind of too much.
Yeah, let's do some so definitely some positives I got to give are the action is amazing.
Yeah,
When his house gets destroyed, that is visually an extremely cool scene. Um, the end when all the suits show up to help in the final battle, that
yeah,
was definitely pretty cool looking. The only issue I think I had with it was a lot of those suits got destroyed pretty easily.
yeah. I mean, like this is Iron Man. Like his suits are like hard. Like he can
He
take.
got hit with a tank missile
Yes.
in what, Mark 3 in the first movie, and he stood up completely unscathed. And now these things are getting shattered
Yeah,
like
like
there's no tomorrow.
yeah, yeah, and my favorite action scene was the plane where he rescues the
Yep,
people from the plane.
that scene was amazing.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give props to the action. Like the action was creative. Even like even the small ones where like he's handcuffed and he has to try and fight the super red molten chick, like, and he has to
Yeah,
like
yeah.
use his i- ingenuity to like kill this girl without having his suit. I thought that
Hmm.
I thought that was pretty awesome. Like it shows that
Yeah.
Tony's more than the suit. He's a guy that's really smart. That. So yeah, those are stuff that
I
that
think the only other thing I have a major problem with, and this one, I haven't seen anyone been able to give me a good answer on this one. So I hear a lot of times in other movies, and we all hear it in other types of movies, like especially these expanded universes, where they're like, something big is happening, and then people go, like, oh, where is X? Why didn't X show up to help or something?
yeah,
Like Suicide Squad, they're like, oh, why didn't Batman help when he was in Gotham, or where was the Justice League during what was happening during Suicide Squad? Fair
right.
question. But the president was kidnapped in this movie. Where was Shield? How did only Tony know where to go find him? Why wasn't Shield or Captain America involved in finding the president of the United States? This wasn't an instance like in Thor: The Dark World, which we'll get to next, where it was an extremely quick incident that happened in London, where there wouldn't have been time for anybody else to get there, and it was up to Thor to do it, and it was done and over in less than 20 minutes. This was something that the president got kidnapped, and just Rhodey and Tony Stark showed up to look for the president. There's no
Yeah,
military, no shield, nothing.
no Avengers. Yeah, like the president got kidnapped. You don't think Nick Fury would at least be like, no,
Exactly. There should have been
yeah,
something.
yeah, that's probably an oversight. It's a plot hole that people
Well, it is, but I'm just flipping it on the same side of like, if we're going to be
least.
looking at stuff, I mean, like it's okay, Suicide Squad's not a good movie. I'm not defending it, but I'm just saying that's something where I hear that's also one of the complaints I hear thrown in is like, where are members of the Justice League and whatnot? Well, where was Shield when the president got kidnapped in Iron Man 3? Got to be fair across the board.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, yeah, yeah. Gotta be
But
fair.
I guess overall with Iron Man 3, it's got some positives, but I think it's also got some really low negatives. So for me, it'll always be the worst of the Iron Man trilogy, but it's not an overall horrible movie. And those who enjoy it, more power to you. It's not for me.
Yeah, same. Iron Man 3, it's always been a mixed bag. Like, I really enjoy it when I watched it, but then, like, as you grow and you do repeat viewings, you kind of see the flaws in the movie, and like, yeah, this wasn't that good, and this was terrible. So yeah, but I like how it ends. He removes the arc reactor and he becomes a new man.
I
And
guess, but that also raises questions of if it was that easy to remove the arc reactor, why didn't he just do it in 2? Because he
yeah,
was dying in 2 because of the arc reactor. So if it was that simple, why didn't he just do it earlier when he was dying instead of for no reason at the end
yeah,
of 3?
yeah, yeah. See, that's the problem. This creates plot holes, and that's why I
That's
think,
why Favreau needed to be in charge. Again, that's why I think it was a mistake, and I think this is a movie Feige definitely does not look back on with fond memories because it just didn't. I know originally, I think I could be wrong. I think this was supposed to be the end of Downey's contract, so they were trying to give him a proper out. But at the same time, it's like I don't know. I feel like there's a lot we don't know that went on behind the scenes. I think he was planning on staying longer, but who knows? But yeah, either way, Iron Man 3, good, mixed bag, some good stuff, some junk.
yep,
So moving on to the second movie of 2013. Probably the one I don't think I've ever seen anyone rank this one higher than the lower fourth of the entire MCU.
yep,
And I think it deserves to be there, but I think the low points of Thor: The Dark World are easy to pick apart. So maybe we can touch on those, but I'd like to focus on some of the more positives
yeah.
from
Same.
Thor: The Dark World
Let's go positive.
because I think a lot of the positives of this movie definitely get overshadowed by the negatives, which there is a lot of negatives. There's a lot of them, but I think the positives get lost along the way. So I think personally for me, one of my favorite scenes of the Dark World, and definitely something that again is just forgotten in the MCU as a whole, is when Frigga gets killed and the impact it has on Thor.
Yeah, that's the thing, you know what I mean? Like a lot of people say Ragnarok's a great movie, and yeah, I agree. But the thing is, the Dark World had something that Ragnarok didn't. It had like emotional brevity, you know, that point where Frigga gets killed and there's that amazing score by Brian Tyler where they send her off like in a classic Viking style
That
funeral.
that scene was amazing.
Yeah, and it's like it shows that, you know, there is emotion, you know, to this movie, and
Hmm.
it has heart. And I remember watching it, and like I remember liking it, but I never thought it was good as the first Thor. And that's the thing,
No.
you know. Yeah, you know, that's the thing. What I like, I think the best thing that this movie has going for it is the banter or the relationship between Thor and Loki, which was done extremely well in this one. In my opinion,
Definitely. Oh, definitely. Couldn't agree more on
my
that.
opinion, I think in terms of relationship between Thor and Loki, the Dark World takes the cake on this one. Because like in Ragnarok, what were they? They were like they were teasing each other, but they weren't really like uh at each other's throats. And in Thor, you didn't know Loki was the bad guy until like the very end of the movie. In the
Hmm.
Avengers, there was like only a couple of scenes between Thor and Loki. Didn't have enough time, but here there's like an entire adventure and Loki and Thor on for the ride. Like
Hmm.
I love that scene where personally in the Dark World, I love that scene where they're talking, and they're about to, you know, do their plan, and they're arguing, and Loki's Thor says something to the effect of, you were so useless in your cell, and Loki says, who put me there? Who put me there? And then Thor goes, you know damn well who put you there. It's like, yeah, those are scenes that show the complicated relationship between Thor and Loki, and it's great. I love that.
Definitely. I think Tom Hiddleston definitely got to shine. I almost feel like Tom Hiddleston shined more as Loki in this than he did in the first Thor and even the Avengers.
Yeah, yeah,
He just, I mean, I thought he was brilliant in this movie, and it's just, yeah, the movie does have a lot of negatives to it. I mean, I think my biggest issue with it is the story was not. I feel like the story was an afterthought to the concept of the film. I think it feels like part of the MCU and everything's connected, and obviously building now toward now that once you get out of the origin film, which is there to set up the origin, then that's when you have to tell these stories of the characters going forward, building, growing, changing from their initial the first time we saw them.
yeah,
And this movie definitely felt like it was just more of a it felt more like a movie that was just there to introduce another Infinity Stone where they took the story second, which it's the
yeah,
opposite because Guardians did the same thing, which we'll get to in a little bit. Guardians was built around introducing an Infinity Stone, but they also built their world up around it and their characters around it. Thor: The Dark World didn't feel like they knew what they were doing yet with the concept of introducing an Infinity Stone and telling a worthwhile story. Because unfortunately, and this sucks because I was really looking forward to the villains in this, the Dark Elves. I was like, this could be something cool. These other realm evil elves. Let's build on it. And they just didn't do anything with them.
yeah. It's like
They didn't do anything.
the
And
villains were
I'm like,
plus.
wow, this is the definition of a weak villain.
Yeah, that's the
Like,
thing, you know, like again, Thor: The Dark World is like, in my opinion, is like Iron Man 3. Good concepts, shit execution. Like you had that when you had that thing where the cursed, you know, where they put the device and the guy becomes stronger. You know, like
mhm.
you're gonna be cursed to live this lifestyle. Like wow, that's insane. Like there are good concepts to these dark elves, except that the fact that the execution was so bad.
Exactly. They just didn't know. I felt like something was going wrong with this movie from the get-go. It feels like there really was no planning to it because it's there's just so many parts where they're just a muddled mess. And it's just like, oh, you've dropped the ball on that. Dropped the ball on that. I mean, the ether looked cool. The final battle looked cool, but I'm sorry, it's like Darcy and Jane worked in the first one because they were there to lead Thor, and they were the relatable ones where Thor wasn't on planet Earth. But
Right.
in this one, Jane just it was cool obviously watching Jane get to go to Asgard. That was pretty cool. But just oh my gosh, Darcy was just unbearable in this film. I couldn't I could not and it's just like they were trying to go for this darker tone it felt like, but they were intersplicing comedy that did not work. So I don't know. I think Thor: The Dark World belongs where it does on a lot of people's lists, near the bottom. If you're one of those people who has it up top, though, no joke, comment below. Let us know why. Because I genuinely always love seeing films that I don't think exceed. And if someone's able to explain their side of it to me and let me know why they think it's really good, I always enjoy hearing stuff like that because it means you saw something I didn't, and maybe by you explaining it to us, we might see it from a different perspective.
Yep.
But yeah, just overall, Thor: The Dark World, I don't think there's a lot to say. I think it looks pretty good. But yeah, it doesn't. I don't think it really holds up. It was just more of a placeholder film to introduce another Infinity Stone. I mean, I stand by that.
Yep. I agree.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't really have anything left to say about Thor: The Dark World. Do you?
Nah, I'm good.
Okay. Moving on then to 2014, where we get a lot where to me, I think now to me there's a difference between the word favorite and best. This
Eh,
movie is not my favorite of the MCU, but I will stand by that this is the best film in the MCU. Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
I think we can all agree that this is like near perfect,
It
Chad.
really is. It is just an amazing film, I thought. It's just from start to finish, I just think I honestly can't think of really anything wrong with this film.
I can. So let's just list all the positives about it. Number one, the action. Oh my god, the action in this movie,
Is amazing.
insane, insane. That highway scene is one of the best scenes in the
Yep.
entire MCU.
The hand-to-hand combat between Winter Soldier and Steve when they're fighting, I thought that was oh, it was so cool watching. It
And
just everything in this film. I mean, the stakes in this film are so much higher than I mean, a lot of people. Like I said, a lot of people say this is their favorite or their best, either one, whatever word you choose. And I think it's just so much deeper than even people seem to remember when they're praising it. I mean, it really was a nice a metaphor for the government, basically, the United
yeah,
States government at least.
yeah, it really is a metaphor about the government, how they're corrupt, how they're willing to kill all these people just to
Mm-hmm.
keep the peace. And it's like there's a like Hydra is basically the government, It's like
Yep. Oh,
that.
that was amazing how Hydra infiltrated to the top of Shield. I mean,
Yeah,
that just shows that they were coming back stronger than we even expected them to.
yeah, and it's like, oh my god, um it's amazing to see the fact that uh that was when I watched it in theaters, that just blew my mind because the trailers didn't reveal anything. I went in knowing nothing about the movie, and that reveal where Zola, well, I guess that's like the one flaw I have that could be in this movie. Like Zola creates an algorithm that can predict people's future. I mean, yeah, that's kind of
I mean,
that's
I never read a comic or saw a cartoon with Zola in it, so I don't really know I don't really know the character that well, but I mean, it made sense. He was pretty smart. He got captured and basically, became a turncoat, but he held on to his Hydra origins and used them to keep pushing Hydra further and further.
yeah, it made sense. I liked it, but it's just like it's kind of like other like it's almost the point of it almost clips the suspension cord of disbelief, but
Yeah, that's
not.
fine.
Yeah, but it doesn't. It's still like it's like a small blemish in this.
That's so minuscule that it almost like on the overall of the movie, that's almost one of those things where it's like, yeah.
Yeah, and then
But okay, so here's the question that I think I love hearing people's reactions to this. Now, me, I did know who the Winter Soldier was. Did you know that he was Bucky or no going in?
Yeah, I that was the one thing I
Okay.
knew. I there was an old cartoon like called Avengers Assemble, and they did an episode called The Winter Soldier, and the Winter Soldier was revealed at the end to be Bucky. So it's like, oh, okay. So when the movie
Hmm.
came out called Captain America: The Winter Soldier, I was like, okay, that means Bucky's coming back. So like when here the fight scene when he removed the mask and Bucky was there, I was like, and it was like so surprised. I was like, I'm not really shocked, but yes, okay.
That's how it was for me too. But I remember I had a couple of friends with me who didn't know who the Winter Soldier was. And I just remember one of my friend's girlfriends was with us. And as soon as the mask turned off and he turned and you saw his face, she was like, "Oh my God, it's Bucky! He's alive!" And it's like, that's sometimes why I almost wish I didn't know so much about comics because that would have been a really cool twist to have not seen coming and having gotten that surprise.
Yeah, that's the thing, like I guess for like comic book fans who know the Winter Soldier is, it won't be a surprise. But for like the majority,
Yeah,
uh,
I was glad that a lot of people were able to get to see that and thought it was really cool.
yeah. Anyway, but what I love about it is with the Winter Soldier so much, it's the game-changing element. Like Shield, the
Shield
protector.
fell.
Yeah, Shield fell, and they never brought it back. Like, oh, okay, Shield's back better than ever in Age of Ultron. No, Shield fell
Shield's.
after
I
this.
mean, I know there was the I know there's the Agents of Shield, which I tried. I don't. I'm not going to watch it. For those who enjoy it, awesome. I'm just going off the movies when it comes to Shield. Shield never really. I mean, they showed back up in the Helicarrier in Age of Ultron, but I
Yeah.
mean, Shield isn't back the way it was where they had the Security Council and everything like they did at the end, like they did in Winter Soldier. I mean, it's basically gone. The handling of the Avengers became the Avengers themselves.
Yeah, the Shield. I love the fact that Shield just burned to the ground because Hydra was really a parasite that was too deep in the roots of Shield to ever like if you destroy Hydra, Shield's going down with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the fact that I'll be honest with you here. I like Black Widow and Falcon were badass in this movie. I mean, like they were really good. Like the elements where she would be able to like talk to Captain and say kiss me, and Captain's like why public displays of affection make people really uncomfortable, and like
That was good.
I love how she knows it. And I'm not sure what your opinion on Falcon is, but I think Falcon.
I I think Falcon is a very underrated character in the MCU, and I'm truly glad we get to see a lot of him.
Yeah, I like Falcon in this movie. Anthony Mackie really, you know,
Well,
he really,
out of so many of the movies, like this one is another one to me where it still had that vibe of almost Phase One, where it has a realness to it. Like Falcon was running like a group for people in the military who came out and just needed somewhere to like talk and mentally heal themselves. I mean, that's very real. That's a lot deeper than we get in a lot of these movies. So I've got to say, I definitely give the Russos props. I think the Russos, I think this isn't really a problem, but it almost feels like the Russos came in almost too strong. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
Like they came in and they gave us their absolute best work in their first movie that they did for the MCU,
Winter
which
Soldier.
is not a problem in the movie in the slightest. It's not even really a problem overall. We'll get to more of their work in later episodes, obviously. But just yeah, everything about this movie to me is just I really can't think of any negatives. I really can't. I think just from beginning to end, it's an incredible action espionage film.
It really is. It really is the definition of a superhero film, but that also has realness towards it. Now,
Hmm.
there's a culmination of both in this movie, and I love everything about it, how it even ends where Bucky's like beating the shit out of Captain America, and Captain America's like, I'm not gonna fight you anymore because you're my friend and I'm with you till the end of the line. It's really testament to what what,
Who Captain America is.
yeah, the ideals of Captain America, exactly.
And that's
So,
why I think out of the main three, Iron Man, Cap, and Thor, that's why Captain America is my favorite because I mean, he stays strong no matter what.
yep,
He is a natural born leader. And Chris Evans just again in this movie proved to us again why he will always be remembered as, like until they do a reboot of everything in who knows how many years. Chris Evans will always be my Captain America.
same.
He's just great no matter what.
Yep. So yeah,
So
I
yeah,
guess
I mean,
that wraps up Winter Soldier. I mean, like, what is it? What else is there to say that hasn't been said?
the ending fight is incredible.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the choreography in this movie is great. Um, yeah, I mean, I think we've listed everything, and to basically just sit and rehash everything is almost pointless because, I mean, it's almost universal. I really haven't seen. I mean, again, here's another one where I'm going to flip it into the opposite of what we did for the Dark World. If you can think of any negatives that maybe you're one of those people who you don't like this film, you don't view it as anything that great. Again, tell us below. I'd really like to see and hear some thoughts that don't reflect our own. I always welcome discussion like that. So if the Winter Soldier, you don't think it's that good, you don't think it's great, let us know why. Seriously, I'd easily love to engage with anyone. So yeah, Winter Soldier, I don't think we have anything left to say. It's another one where it's almost we would just be repeating everything else that is already said in common knowledge. So
Yep.
moving on to probably another one of this one is one of my favorites. I think right now I have this one at my number two out of the
Like,
entire MCU. Guardians of the Galaxy.
again, like Winter Soldier, I think it's near perfect. I mean, like, what can you say that hasn't been said? Guardians of the Galaxy to me is one of the most passionate films of the MCU. You can tell James Gunn really put
Oh,
his soul and
he
creativity.
loved making this movie. You could just tell. I mean, and you could even tell from the scandal when Disney let him go over those old tweets, just the devotion and loyalty that his crew have to him. And it's like
Yeah,
you can tell he poured his heart and soul into this film. And I think he definitely delivered. I easily, before Infinity War, this was my favorite of the entire MCU. It's
this is
just,
a this is an amazing film. I mean, like, it's genius for him to put soundtracks from our world into a space movie. That's never been done before. Like that opening scene where Star Lord puts on his headphones and starts dancing to Redbone's "Come and Get Your Love."
well, and
That
that directly follows a scene where he was watching his mother die from
yeah,
cancer as a boy. He runs off. This poor kid is distraught, broken. He doesn't know what he's going to do with his life now that his mother is dying. He runs outside and gets abducted by aliens. Then we flash to the intro, and the next thing we see is him putting on the music and dancing. I mean, I remember sitting in the theater. I was like, what are we in for? And it did not let me down at all.
it did not. This is one of this. This is my mom's favorite MCU movie. This is
Nice.
this is the one where she's like, I am in love with Marvel Studios right now because the soundtracks are from her generation. So when she was watching this, her mind was blown. And really, who can blame her? Because this movie is for everyone. I mean,
Yup. It's got so much good comedy in it, and it's just truly got a great story about finding a family in the least expected place. I mean, it was like go back and watch the original trailers where they're breaking down who all these people are. I mean, they're basically just a giant group of misfits and freaks, and they all come together and bond together over various odd goals. I mean, there's Star-Lord who is just trying to survive. There's Gamora who's trying to get back at Thanos. There's Drax who wants to get back at Thanos. And there's Rocket who just wants money. And there's Groot who's just there because Rocket's there.
yeah, and it's
I mean,
amazing
these
how
characters to me are just, they're so colorful and they're so interesting to watch. This is what I was saying earlier with the Dark World. This is how you make a movie where you're going to introduce introduce an Infinity Stone to push the overall plot of the MCU and still give us an extremely entertaining film.
Yeah, that's the thing, like this movie loves being weird. It's unapologetically weird. Like, man, the world building is insane. That's seen in nowhere where like it's a giant head and there are
Yep.
people living inside it, harvesting the brain tissue and spinal fluid of this giant head. It's clear that there's like they really
It
thought this out.
started showing how big the Marvel universe had become now that we weren't, because when in Thor and Thor the Dark World we saw a few random places, but they didn't really build on the universe yet. This one I feel did a lot more of a good job building up the universe of space for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, one of my favorite scenes is still the scene where Ronan is confronting Thanos, and just that was the first time we'd seen Thanos since his brief little cameo at the end of the Avengers, and I thought it was amazingly done.
Yep, I agree because like the way his chair swivels around and it shows Josh Brolin as Josh Brolin as Thanos. It's like that's amazing. Like he's gonna be awesome when he finally takes the Avengers, and we'll talk about that in Phase 3. But you
It
know,
definitely did. It really showed it showed what we were going to be getting from him coming sooner. I mean, I think they flipped it obviously when we got to Infinity War because it was a few years later, so that was a bit of a different Thanos after what he'd been through on his journey. But that's why I will obviously go further into Endgame when we get to it. But I feel like this was a good introduction to the bloodthirsty Thanos that we were going to get at the end of Endgame again.
yeah, I
And I
agree.
think they did a good job. But Ronan, I think Ronan is a very underrated MCU villain. I have seen the points people make. He's boring, blah blah blah, and all that. Which I don't think he is. I think he's just a. I mean, he basically is he's a religious fanatic who's going about trying to cause a genocide, and that's what he wants. And he doesn't show any mercy from the get-go. I mean, the movie starts with him brutally murdering somebody.
Yeah, like you can tell, this guy is like this guy's nuts, but he's unapologetically nuts. Like he doesn't care about life. He just wants to destroy worlds for his people. He's bloodthirsty, and now that works because he's a crazy villain in a crazy story. I mean, like this is a movie where a guy whistles and the arrow follows his music to kill other people. You know, and like, Ronan's the least crazy thing about this world
Yeah,
that
no
the blockbuster.
kidding.
I mean, like,
And a lot of people, one of the negatives I've seen from people that I don't understand why is they were like, oh my gosh, they ended the movie with the dance off. No, they didn't end the final fight with the dance off. They had the dance off, but then they had the power struggle of trying to use the power of the Infinity Stone. That
right.
was the finale of the fight. The dance off was just there because that's just this crazy weird world all these aliens live in. So I think it's like you almost got to relate. He left Earth when he was a boy. He didn't Star-Lord didn't watch, he didn't get to watch a lot of movies. So to him it's funny, but I can see why people roll their eyes at it, but I thought it was funny because like he said, it was just a distraction. It was just some weird distraction to get Ronan to pay attention to something else while they prepared the big gun to get the Power Stone away from him.
Right. And the thing is, it shows Star Lord's character. He's goofy. That's something Star Lord would do to distract Ronan, to distract the enemy. You
Yeah,
know?
I mean, and I think they definitely showed a great side of Star-Lord in this movie. I mean, he basically sacrificed his life to save Gamora when they were out in space.
Yeah,
And
and then
that
like
says a lot about a character who's willing to do something
that's
like that.
that's my favorite scene in the entire. Okay, that scene or probably the end where they all grasp the stone together.
That
That
was great to watch.
that scene where Star Lord goes out, and like this is that guy who like at the beginning you could tell he has this scoundrel Han Solo-ish vibe, who just
Hmm.
like sell his mom or sell his relative just to get cash. He goes out and saves this girl who he barely knows. And I love that. I love how the music cues up and Rocket's on his communicator saying, "You're gonna die. You will die in seconds." And so he doesn't give a damn. He puts the mask and the coloring, the direction. Man, dude, Gunn was a genius with this film.
Definitely. I'd seen a few Gunn movies before this, but this was the one that really pulled me back towards wanting to watch a lot more of his stuff. And I really do encourage anyone out there, if you haven't seen a lot of Gunn's other work, Slither is a great horror film, and Super is another one that I think a lot of people would like. It's a lot deeper, darker of a superhero film that if you like Kick-Ass, I think you'd like it. But yeah, overall, Guardians of the Galaxy, yeah, I'd definitely say this one it's one of my favorites. It'll always be one of my favorites. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. I can't praise it enough.
Right.
So moving on, now we are entering the first movie of 2015, and this is another mixed bag. Age of Ultron.
Age of Ultron, in my opinion, I'm not sure about you. Age of Ultron is very, very underrated for me.
Here's how I look at it. Age of Ultron has some great things in it. It's been a while since I've watched it from beginning to end, but I just know it's another one almost like Iron Man 3 where the good stuff is amazing, outstanding, but there's a lot of it that I just don't think worked. I think probably one of the biggest things I despise about this film is there was no build up to it at all, which doesn't make sense. And I also hate how we get the buildup of Hydra infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D. all the way up to the top, and suddenly they're just all taken out at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Boom, gone. It's over. It's like you just set up the next evolution of Hydra just to wipe them out. What was the point?
Yeah.
And there's just, I don't.
I feel like
that's just one of the things.
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, there are good stuff in this movie. Like, in my opinion, I like James Spader's portrayal as Ultron.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, like,
he was amazing.
He gets swept under the rug a lot, in comparison to Loki and Thanos. But man, he was good. I mean, like,
the only problem with Ultron was he was a one and done. That's why he's not as remembered as Loki and Thanos.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the problem. Ultron was one and done, but he made an impression on me. It's like he's a sarcastic robot who just wants to kill the entire human race. I mean, like, it's awesome. Like, he's fun to watch on screen. And another thing I feel like is very underrated. Wanda Maximoff, Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda Maximoff in this movie, really, really.
And
for me.
And you know what? I think both the twins were amazing in this film.
Yes.
It's just a shame that. Okay, so they tried to build this film up as like the bigger, darker brother of the first one. Like we're moving on, we're gonna get bigger, we're gonna get darker, and then they're building up to is everyone gonna survive? Ultron. I mean, in the comics, Ultron is unstoppable. In this one, he really wasn't. And they're building up obviously to somebody getting killed. And this is just my personal theory that I stand by. But obviously they knew Civil War when filming this, they knew Civil War was coming out the next year. So obviously while filming this, they knew what was coming. And honestly, you could tell that killing off Quicksilver, I think, was a very stupid choice. And I stand by this. They only did it because if you look at Civil War, basically all the fights were, everyone had an equal that they squared off against, right?
Yeah.
There was no other person to square Quicksilver off against. So basically whoever had Quicksilver was going to have a leg up against the other team in Civil War. Right. So they killed him off because they just didn't know what to do with him. And I found that very disrespectful to the character almost of like, well, that was pointless then. because he barely got to shine.
Yeah, I agree. Or I heard a rumor that Fox didn't want two Quicksilver, so one had to die. So
I'll pick a different character then. Don't introduce a new character just to kill them off right away.
yeah.
Pointless.
Yeah,
I
but
mean, and honestly, it's like everyone who does the, like, oh, later in the series we got to see Hawkeye as Ronin. That's amazing. Good for you. But I genuinely think it would have hit home harder if Hawkeye was the one to have gotten killed, because that was a character we'd grown to enjoy and we'd seen and we'd gotten to know a bit better than Quicksilver. I mean, what was I supposed to feel when Quicksilver died? We didn't know anything about him. He barely did anything and he barely spoke. We didn't know his character. So watching him die didn't really do anything for me emotionally.
yeah, same. It's like he was just there and then got killed. It wasn't a really big impact.
Yeah, so it's like they definitely missed the ball on that one. But yeah, I think just overall the story, I don't think the story is that great. I think it's kind of pathetic that Tony got in absolutely no trouble for what he did. I mean, I'm sorry, he should have been in a padded cell for the remainder of his existence for creating Ultron and almost causing global extinction. But no, nothing. He voluntarily hung up the suit and walked away.
Yeah,
I've never liked that. Um, but I mean, the movie does have some good things, I guess. I mean, yeah, I like Ultron. I like Wanda. But overall, I just don't think I like Vision. Vision's great.
yep. Vision was
Um,
awesome. I like the
but
setup. Like the
yeah,
what
it
they
was
did.
a good idea, but I think the negatives in this film just outweigh the positives. I don't think it. I don't know. It might require a rewatch because it's been a couple years, but I just remember the last time I watched it, I still was not that impressed.
To me, it's like it's the weakest Avengers movie for me.
Yes. I
Mm.
won't say I'd put this in like the middle of the lower half of the MCU, I guess. I wouldn't say it's garbage, but I also wouldn't say it's not one I would really suggest to many people because quite frankly, aside from Vision getting created and Wanda joining the team, you really can skip this film.
Yep. Like
So,
it doesn't really affect the overall story of what happens after, which sucks really because the main problem I have with this movie, it doesn't it doesn't leave a lasting impression.
eh,
It's just there and
which
it
is
goes.
exactly what Civil War did. So, Civil War had a bigger impact on the MCU than Age of Ultron did.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that. So, yeah, Age of Ultron, I don't really have much left to say except, yeah, Ultron was cool. Wanda was cool. I guess the fight with the Hulk and the Hulkbuster suit was cool.
Yeah,
But
that was
other than
cool.
that, I don't really have a lot to say on this one.
Mhm.
So, moving on to now another one of my favorite ones, and that's why Phase 2 is so split for me because Phase 2 has some of my favorite movies and it has some of my least favorite movies. And this is another one that's one of my favorites, Ant-Man.
Ant-Man is so underrated.
It is.
It gets swept under the rug a lot. I don't understand why. It's so
Neither do I. It's a blast.
okay. Here's the thing. I'm gonna be slammed for sure for like using this pun, but I love the fact that it's such a small story. Like
It
it's a heist
it
movie.
is. It really is. It's so cool because it's so different really from what we've seen in the MCU so far. It wasn't just a generic action comedy. It really was a completely different type of film. It was a smaller film that is definitely one where, like we said earlier with like Iron Man 3 and Thor, there's nothing world changing that's happening that anybody else knows about. If it wasn't for Scott as Ant-Man, the remnants of Hydra would have gotten the Pym particles or whatever we want to call the version that the villain came up with in this one. So
Yeah.
it's like Ant-Man did save the world, just in a different type of way than we'd seen so far.
Yeah, I mean, like, and really, this makes more sense because, like, Shield doesn't know what PIM particles are. They don't know. So like,
Well, they did,
like
but
yeah. I
but
mean,
Hank wouldn't give it to them, so they eventually just had to give up.
yeah, and I like the fact that what makes in my opinion Ant-Man so good is the character himself. Paul Rudd as Scott Lang really is like, I'm sorry, like there's no one else who can play Ant-Man like Paul Rudd will play Ant-Man. He's just like,
Definitely, he is easily Paul Rudd as Ant-Man. Seriously, he is probably my favorite Avenger. I love the character to death. He is so much fun to watch, and he excels at the role. He's awesome, and it's like another thing I love about it. If you think about it, this really is another one where it's like that's about family. I mean,
yeah,
think how much he does for his daughter.
yeah, that was insane. Like the fact that he's so passionate about his kid, and it's like, and I like the fact that he doesn't use the Ant-Man suit to its full potential until the very end. Like the heist is where he finally, uses it. But like,
And seeing him train, seeing basically just this little con man who's trying to go straight, break the law one more time, accidentally get like one of my favorite lines of the whole film is when he returns the suit, and
yeah,
that's when the cops show up, and he's like, "I wasn't stealing anything. I was returning what I stole."
this
This
movie
movie
is
is just filled with so many fun things. Like, I mean, stop and think about it. Did you ever think you'd see another movie if you haven't? I mean, if you haven't seen the original Honey I Shrunk the Kids, did you ever think you'd see a movie where you felt bad for an ant when his aunt got killed?
I felt so bad. I was like,
I
wow,
did too.
I can't believe I'm attached to that. Like, really?
I know, Anthony.
And like this movie is so, again, Peyton Reed really is so passionate about
Yes,
this film, and a lot of people don't really talk about. Ant-Man really has a memorable superhero theme. I like the theme. The dun 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 dun, dun. Like it really feels like
it's
it, it's
and
an Ant-Man.
the funny thing with this movie is obviously, as most people know, Edgar Wright was originally scheduled to direct, and he had a different idea, but what he'd been working on did not fit within the MCU. So I can see why everything was changed. I'd still like to at some point know what he wanted to do, but I don't think this is a situation where I'm too angry because I think Peyton Reed definitely, like you said, he did such a good job on this. Uh, he really did. He picked up the pieces and he made an amazing film.
Yeah,
It's just a fun roller coaster ride from beginning to end. And I mean, it's got some of the most memorable scenes and it's got one of the most memorable scenes ever when Luis is telling the story.
yeah.
Remember that when he's telling that using his voiceover to talk to other people? That scene is hilarious.
It's so creative the way like this is one of the Marvel movies where the comedy is spot on. It's not forced
Yep.
like in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. It's like the comedy here is so spot on. Like when Louise is telling a story, or when my favorite one personally is where Scott gives the bunny to the daughter, and, and the daughter's like,
It's so ugly.
I love him. Like wow, I, I was on the floor of the cinema because it was so
Mhm.
fun. It was
It
it's
was. And that little girl, she did a great job in this and Ant-Man and the Wasp, I thought.
yeah, it's so well done. Like this movie
It really is such a good family movie too, if you stop and think about it.
is so overlooked. Really, it's like
It is. It's such a forgotten piece of the MCU, I feel like sometimes. Because people are, oh yeah, well, I mean, it takes place in California and it doesn't really connect to everything else. It's like, yeah, that's the point. Not everything has to be, the Thor, Iron Man, Captain America series. It's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's building a bigger world with all these different characters why is it an issue that it's a smaller film? It's a heist film that takes place far away from everybody else. I think that's one of the strengths of it.
yeah, it really is one of the. it is one of the best Marvel movies I've seen in a long time because it's just really good. It's like
Mm-hmm.
as I sit back and reminisce. And okay, before we close out this topic, underrated Michael Douglas as Hank Pym and Evangeline Lilly as Hope Van
Oh,
Dyne.
easily, easily. They we'll get to them again with Ant-Man and the
No, I
Wasp,
love that
but I
scene.
was so happy we got to build on them more.
I love that scene where Hank finally tells the story of what happened with Janet, and you can see Hope is really
That
pissed
was
about it.
so well done.
And he's like, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" And it's like, "I didn't want to hurt you." Like, ah, it was so good, man, dude. This
Yeah,
movie is like,
Ant-Man is seriously such an underrated character in the MCU. I genuinely will always stand by that. And I was so happy to see that. I mean, at first the rumors said that Iron Man 3, I mean, Ant-Man 3 wasn't going to happen, but I'm so glad that it's back on the table right now because
yeah,
Ant-Man deserves his finale for the trilogy. We need more Wasp. And I'm saying it's almost like a struggle. What directors can actually make full trilogies? And I definitely feel Peyton Reed deserves to make his finale to an Ant-Man trilogy because I love the character and I'd really love to see the passing of the baton to Cassie at the end of the next Ant-Man movie because I've enjoyed watching. I mean, we'll build on her more later, but I've loved watching Ant-Man and his family just and his crew grow through the entire MCU as
yeah.
well.
It's like Ant-Man and his crew are their very own small group of their own team. And it's great.
Yeah, I mean, like his little group of going straight con men or whatever that they are. That was a great little squad, great supporting cast.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You know what? Ant-Man is one where I say if it's been a while since you've watched it, please go back and rewatch it. I love this film. For me, I rank this literally right behind Guardians. This is my third favorite of the entire MCU.
Really? That's good. That's amazing. I
I
mean,
love this movie. I remember I saw it in theaters. I didn't know what to expect, and I walked out and I'm like, that was awesome.
yeah, it really like as I sit back and reminisce, it's like it's really, really good.
Hmm. The villain, I mean, just we'll cover it quick. Yeah, the villain was a little weaker. Again, I can understand why people weren't a fan of him. I feel like maybe if they devoted maybe 5, 10, 15 more minutes, maybe focusing on
I guess
uh
yeah,
the
scan
history
down.
he'd had with Hank back in the day, I think would have built his character up a little more because I definitely saw potential in the villain. They just didn't do it well enough, which hey, whatever, nothing's perfect.
Yeah, nothing's perfect.
So, so that's it for Phase Two. Overall,
Oh,
I'd have to say Phase Two it's a very mixed bag. It's got some greats and it's got some not so greats. I think Phase Two is definitely an overlooked phase overall because I still stand by what we said last week that Phase Three seems to be the one that a lot of people focus all of their attention on and say Phase Three is the best. And I'm like I don't know. I have a lot more films from Phase One and Phase Two in my top half of ranking of the MCU overall. So I think Phase
number
Two is
phase.
definitely a nice little thing to fall back on and think about and remember also.
Yeah, yeah, I know. But I know in your ranking, it's a phase three film that's your number one, and we'll get into that when we hit
Hmm.
phase three. But yeah, man, it's been nice talking about this and really reminiscing on my memories of each and every Marvel Phase Two film. I think it was really solid.
Yeah, because I think the funniest thing that I think about is it's like coming off of the Avengers. I mean, we just walked out of one of the biggest movies ever at the time, and it just seems like 2013 was just such a bad year for the MCU with Iron Man 3 and the Dark World. But then, I mean, 2014 came back in one of the biggest ways possible with Winter Soldier and Guardians and then follow it up with Age of Ultron, which just was meh, which it is to each their own. But then I mean they capped it off pretty well with Ant Man, I thought. So yeah, overall Phase Two I think was a nice experimental area. I wish they'd done a little more with newer characters. But I mean, we did get the Guardians and Ant-Man out of this, so
Yeah.
I was extremely happy.
Yep. I am extremely happy also, and I think it's phase two in my opinion. There are some bad eggs, sure, yes, I agree, but I think overall the good outweighs the bad in this one. So yeah.
hmm So, guys, what are your overall thoughts on Phase Two? Is it as good as we're saying? Is it worse than what we're saying? Do you like the same ones we like? Do you dislike some? Do you think we're wrong? Do you agree? What do you think of Phase Two? And if it's been a while since you've watched any of them, maybe go back and give them a rewatch. See if any of them, some of the ones you weren't too fan of, uh, are better than you remember, or maybe some of the ones you love, maybe they're not as amazing as you remember. I don't know. But guys, that's it for this week. Next week we will be back and we're going to be talking about the first half of Phase 3.
Yeah.
So that'll definitely be one where I know a lot of people are more excited for that one. So we'll see. So
Yeah,
guys,
one and part two, ladies and gentlemen.
yep, we're splitting it in half just because there's so many of them and there's so much to
So,
say. So guys, this is Chad signing out for the day. Thank you for listening. We will
Santino.
be back next week.
Yes.